Okay, I should be live. Now I go here. I haven't done this. Okay. I should be live. I am live. I did it. So, yes, I really am live. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Until is empty one, and I see Shuttle.io. And hopefully, we'll be joined by some other people very soon because I see people piling, which is good because I want to talk about sales and only sales. And I want to take a lot of people's questions because I love sales. I've been good at it. Everything has been good, and I want to share. Um, and especially as we go into 2021, because everything is changing so much, and we're all not sure what's going to happen when we get to the other side, other than that we'll be received by Amazon. So I see people are here. And hi, Matilda, how are you? Matilda was at that time the third person to see my log. Since then, there's been my daily COVID log that I keep. Since then, there's been one more person, and there's been five people now. So ultimately, they're all going to have to battle it out because there can only be one. And I hear Nancy. Nancy?
Yeah, I can't get, I'm trying to get the thing, it doesn't go on.
What is that?
I'm trying to watch it, but
Really?
yeah, the arrow to click, it doesn't do anything.
Try it again and let me know.
Okay.
All right. You might have to refresh it. Okay. So I want questions, but first, as I'm waiting for the questions to come in, Daniel Babbitt says my question doesn't fit. I don't know because you and I have exchanged DMs, so I have a sense of who you are. And I know you're in sales, and I know the kind of general region you are. So I'll take your question also. And if you're a startup, because I saw some questions that people were asking about like building a sales team, which is a really interesting question, but it's hard to be responsive to it because there's no prescription. So I really have to get a sense of what the company does and who the customers or the prospects are and how well defined the company is. So I did a podcast with Jim, and that was awesome. And I was the first person to be on his podcast twice, and I think that's a testimonial to my extreme sales because I did it. And I take all these things as kind of small victory, right? It's kind of cool, and maybe it's a big victory. It'll be a big victory if I do number 3. If I do number 3, which I'm already pitching him for, awesome. That's like a huge victory. And then I have to go for number 4. So Daniel, no, please. You said the question, and I'm fine with it. Whatever it is, if it's a long question, I can do it as a speed round. Matilda, I'm waiting for your article about colleges. I didn't forget. I'm an extreme salesperson, which means I also have a really good memory. So I'm going to scroll here, and I see Chuck is here as well. I want questions because this is only going to be about sales. So I'm going to start off then, and I'll let everybody kind of get into it. So the first thing is I get asked a lot is people ask me kind of what the tricks or what the gimmicks are, and you can never really start there. There really is no tricks and there is no gimmicks. Yeah, Chuck, I see that. So thank you very much. You can't really start with kind of the middle, or you can't really start like if it's an alphabet, you can't really start the alphabet on D because your dictionary is going to be much too short. So you really have to start with what is sales and what your own self-identity is. I think the self-identity is the most important part because that's where people really have a lot of reluctance. The person who has to sell something doesn't consider it part of their identity. And in a sense, they're ashamed of it. And that's a really, really bad thing. So you should never, never be ashamed of it because you've got to bring it into your own identity. And I'll give you a little bit of my own background. When I started off in sales, I knew I was going to be very good at sales, but it took me a while to feel comfortable with it. When I was kind of finished with that part of my career, I started looking back a little bit, what made me successful and kind of putting all those pieces together that I never really made into a kind of cohesive philosophy. I knew it as it was coming together throughout my career, but I never kind of assembled it into something that that I could communicate. So I could kind of communicate anecdotes and little bursts of information and little blips here and there, but nothing that I would say that was complete, that took everything that I knew and kind of squashed it down into something really, really small. And I'm skipping around a little bit, but back when I was in sales and I would see other people selling, I would just sit back and watch. And I would sit back and watch the people who really failed and they really shouldn't have been there. They didn't feel comfortable with it, and they were kind of deceiving themselves because they would get in early, they would leave late, but that's not what sales is. That's them trying to persuade themselves and to kind of deceive themselves and their own identity into the effort. But I wanted to get questions because I could talk about myself all the time, and I always do it. And in a way, this is kind of part of the investor series. So I see Ty the Judge here to listen and learn, but that's not good enough because it's not just about listening and learning, because so far there's been nothing to really listen to and nothing to really learn from. Ask about sales. Whatever it is you do, you're always selling to somebody, and even if it's just yourself. So many companies are going all in on unconscious bias training instead of selling stuff. Until is empty said that, and I'll put that up here. I don't know. I can't really tell you because, I don't know. That would be unusual because companies still have to focus on revenue and they still have to focus on bringing in business. And so I don't think they, as much as they want to be activist, I think they also have to bring in sales, and that goes in first. So is it just me where connection is pausing a lot? It could be. So important to have a product you can sincerely recommend. So No Worry says that. Yes, that's very important. But keep in mind, you can tell yourself it's an important product and you can genuinely believe it's an important product, but that doesn't mean it is. So you really need your prospects to tell you that it's an important product. And once they become clients, you need to get referrals from them. You have to. And if somebody asks me about that, I'll be happy to explain that process. But you need your prospects and your clients to tell you that it's important to them. And this way you get a sense of why, and in their own language, and how they view it, because it's going to be a little bit different than the way you view it. And most likely their description of your product is going to be a lot more elegant. They're going to cut through all the crap. All they're going to tell you is what's relevant to them. And there's not going to be the bells and whistles attached to it because they really don't give that a lot of value. So I'm going to scroll through. After setting up an appointment over phone, do you check in via email day before or attend without checking? Hold on. After setting appointment. Okay. So Red Wizard says, that's a nice picture, I think. After setting the appointment over the phone, do you check in via email day before, or B, attend without a check-in? So I punish people when they don't make appointments, when they don't keep their appointments, but I don't really check in with them the day before. I don't think it's necessary because, of course, you're sending them a calendar invitation. And within that invitation, you're also setting the expectation for what will occur during that meeting, as well as if they have to have any paperwork necessary ready for you. And particularly, you'd like to get that paperwork in advance. So it depends on what you're selling to them. But even, on that very first call, if you cold call them or however it occurred, there has to be proper expectations set, because now there's an assembly line, right? And you're putting them on the belt. And as soon as you got them on the phone, they're going on to an assembly line. Now that if they're not a good prospect, you can chuck them off the assembly line. But as soon as they pick up the phone, you've got to get them on that assembly line. So there's a sequence to it. So that means that once you book that appointment, you've already set in their minds a couple of different expectations. One of them is that they're going to give you referrals because you're going to use a lot of your own discretionary effort. You want to have them be a satisfied client, but that also means that you're going to be taking away time from your own prospecting, right? So in exchange, because you're going to be taking away from your own time to bring in new clients, you're relying on them for referrals. So that's part of the expectation that has to be there. And also, if there's any paperwork, again, that's needed in advance, that expectation has to be set also, because you need them to have an emotional commitment to the thing. And we're trying to convert them into our advocate. So if you've already booked it, then most likely philosophically, they've already agreed with what the product is or what the service is. but now we need to get them on the assembly line and just push them through. And it'll be comforting to them because they'll feel it's very professional, and they can kind of see it as their own progression. So okay, so let's see. I think I answered that question. So I'm not even seeing what these questions are. So do you believe on occasional discounts and promotions? I said price of my own subscription, by the way. Yeah, well, it depends on where you are within the company. So I can't really tell you whether it's your own company or whether you're working for somebody else. So I don't really know what the pricing discipline and kind of how rigid it is, and where the company is in its life cycle, and what the other prospects look like, and what the competition is out there looking like. But it depends really on how you sold it, because there's always going to be an intangible quality to a product, or there should be. If you've sold it right, there's an intangible element to it that doesn't really fit on a spreadsheet. So they've already kind of looked at everything against each other, even if they haven't committed that to a piece of paper and kind of itemized it and kind of cross-tabbed it and did everything in advance of your meeting with them. So but the intangible really is what I described in that very first call that you're doing with the person, which is you're going to apply a lot of discretionary effort. And that's something that you can't really see on a spreadsheet that they're using to evaluate everybody. So the reason you're also telling them that very early on is so that they won't have that field within it. It's already just an understanding. But occasional discounts and promotions, I don't know about promotions. It really depends, because I'm not sure what ancillary products you have that you can promote. And I'm not sure, there's some, what the cost of kind of cross-pollinating them is, and how it works within the organization, or if it's just you yourself and you say, buy this and we'll also give you that for half price. It depends. So there's lots of dynamics to that. Discounts, yeah, I mean, ultimately, but it depends also on how you make money, right? If you're making money via commission, then it really is, you don't want to compromise your own commission. If you're working for a company, it's very important that you try not to, because if you're working for a real and a profitable company, commission is a form of revenue share, right? And it's all you're going to get from revenue share. So you're going to get a salary, but your income is really going to be that revenue share. So you don't really want to compromise it too much. You want to push it onto the company, but occasionally you're going to have to do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it also depends on how frequently you're touching the client. Is your expectation going to be a high use client? And it also, is this a contract that's a year contract where you're going to be able to kind of upsell them, or there's a process that goes through a renewal with them to upsell? So own company, all mine, trading newsletter. It depends. There's a lot of people doing that right now. So there has to be something that differentiates, and the differentiator can't just be stock performance. There's really no intimacy to that, because that's almost a commodity product in itself. And one person's return is always going to, there's going to be a little bit of braggadocio in it. And even if you can kind of document it, people buy intimacy. Intimacy is a premium product. So you've got to capture the premium for that, and you've got to know who your clients are and who your clients aren't. So it really depends. So Daniel here says, in a podcast that I did with Jim, which I love that, you spoke on being available to clients 24 hours. True, very true. My wife's in the other room, and she can tell you, I mean, taking phone calls, taking texts and emails all time of the night. And, I didn't really mind it. It causes me anxiety and it causes me stress. But, for me, I like to sell, right? It's a big part of my own identity is I can sell, and that the clients trust me, and I can get it done. And I like the acknowledgement. I like the reward from it. I like the kind of emotional, that whole kind of fulfillment feeling. So yeah, I mean, but keep in mind, you're always selling. And this is something I stressed in the podcast with Jim. It's something I'll stress to everybody. You're always selling a little bit of yourself, no matter what it is, whether you're an artist, whether you're an accountant, whatever it is, you're always selling a little bit of yourself. So you've got to recognize that within your own identity, that you are selling a little bit of yourself. And you have to make sure you're properly compensated for it, because you are giving away a bit of yourself. It's fractional, but it all adds up as you get older, and you'll see. So just make sure you're properly compensated for that little piece of yourself that you're selling, because you're not going to get it back. So what can we do away with selling and think of educating, communicating, helping? No, you're selling. You see, you're trying to get out of it. You're trying to release your own kind of anxiety from it by saying, this is not what I'm doing. No, you're selling. Now, selling can include educating and communicating and helping, but that's all nice. And I appreciate it and it sounds good, but you've forgotten the most important part. So can we maybe do away with selling? Okay. Can we maybe do away with money? Because you need to sell. It's got to be a part of your identity. And so the people's identities, right? When I shut my eyes, I'm thinking about a whole bunch of things, right? When you close your eyes and you're trying to meditate, you're thinking about your day, right? Your time, you're going to time travel a little bit. You're going to be thinking about today. You're going to be thinking about yesterday. And you're going to be thinking about, in this case, no worries. So let's say that's your name, right? So no worries. I am the type of person who, right? You're trying to, while you're meditating, there's a lot of thoughts that are going through your head, but the ones that are the most recurring are time traveling, meetings I had yesterday, today, other things I've got to do. He said this, I said that. But it's also, I am the type of person who, right? And now you've got to figure out your own identity to yourself. So your identity, you're saying, is that educating, communicating, and helping. No, my identity is selling. And that's just a part of it. So then you're also saying, well, I've got my eyes shut, but I can imagine people looking at me, right? It's just a part of a person's identity, and it's part of that vulnerability of having your eyes closed. Is you're saying, you're thinking to yourself, people who are seeing me, I want Adam, or in your case, no worries, is the type of person who, right? This is all natural. It occurs within everybody. So I say to myself, Adam is the type of person who, and then I also say, Adam, me talking to myself, is a type of person who, I want people to think of me as the type of person who, and then you're projecting onto somebody, this invisible person is looking upon you, who is then saying, Adam is the type of person who, right? So I want them to say, Adam is the type of person who can get deals closed. I truly do. And that's my own part of my identity. So you can't get away from that, man. You're a woman. You're shying away from it. So Red Wizard, again, thank you so much for being here. I can't see that picture. Well, I'd like to see that picture. It looks like a statue and perhaps a child with you. So I had my biggest close this week. Each time it happens, it's exhausting, but the feeling is unreal. Yeah, it's emotionally satisfying because you recognize it as part of your identity. So there's a real fulfillment. There's just a real kind of almost a spiritual quality of it because it's so much a part of your identity and you've been giving it away. So it's nice to get both the recognition of closing a deal, the money from closing a deal, and that sense of kind of you applied this discretionary effort and it worked. And you also, I don't know if you work in an office, but you also want people applauding, right? Come on, we got to be honest. It's good to be the king. The real Neil, how are you? What are the best ways to execute a land and expand strategy, starting with one account and adding others? I hear that term a lot about land and expand, and it really depends upon a different, what you're selling. And, that's kind of a buzzword for me, land and expand. It's not something that we really use, that real people who know what they're doing would use. I mean, there's other phraseologies for it, perhaps what you're trying to say. But it really depends also upon who the company is, how much money they have, how much money they have to, what you would say, land and expand. And, it sounds to me like you're introducing a product into a market. So if you can write back, and I'd love to hear the type of product you're introducing, because it also depends on where the economy is. We're going into what appears to be a little bit of a recession, however momentary it is. But one of the things that happens in a recession, despite however quick it is, it doesn't make a difference, is that people reevaluate their vendors, right? So all the vendors go through this process where management is kind of saying, let's just work down the list and let's see, why are we paying this person? Why are we paying this company? What are we paying this for? What are we paying this for? And let's go out there and kind of reprice everything and reevaluate all these vendors. So it gives the new entrant a really perfect time to come into the market and take away some of the low-hanging fruit from the market leaders. So in that type of strategy, you might want to have brute force, which can be immediately unprofitable because you're flooding the street with salespeople, but at the same time, it's got a residual value to it. So that's a very common strategy when it's the leading company and they know they've already built processes that can endure boom or bust cycles. So they know that the recession is going to end, and what comes next. They need to capture that business. So if I'm not being helpful or adding value, then I'm bamboozling. What do you want me to tell you, man? I disagree. That's your own identity. You're going to hold yourself back from sales because maybe you shouldn't be selling that product then. Because I'm not saying in any way to be disingenuous or to sell a bad product, but I'm saying you're trying to avoid the realities that you're selling something. And even me right now here in front of everybody is selling something, right? I'm not trying to sell a book or anything. I've got nothing to sell, but we're always trying to sell. You're even trying to sell yourself to yourself. So right now, when you're saying that, you're trying to sell yourself to yourself. And you've got to really evaluate, if that's what you want to be selling to yourself, because even to use that word bamboozling, I don't know, man. I don't know if you're a man or if you're a woman. Can you sell without cold calling, or is that part of the journey? So Ty, the judge, asked, can you sell without cold calling? Is that just part of the journey? Cold calling is the fastest, most efficient way from point A to point B, right? And I've seen some physics type of experiments where it's not always a straight line from point A to point B, where there's other ways and it's actually faster from point A to point B. So forget about the physics of it. Cold calling is the fastest way, the most efficient way from point A to point B, but it does something more, right? It helps you optimize your own pitch. It helps you hear how people respond to it, and the words that people do want to hear, and it also lets you take out the words that people don't want to hear. It really lets you, I hate the term elevator pitch, but it really lets you practice how you're saying things, how people are responding to it, how you're communicating it. And whether you're a CEO or whoever you are, you should always be cold calling. Now, you might be cold calling differently. A CEO is usually the worst salespeople are CEOs. Even though they usually think they're the best, and sometimes they're kind of CEOs that have moved up. But typically, they're selling a product that isn't, without getting into it too much. But so it's not just about cold calling because it's part of the journey. It's also cold calling because it helps you define what the product is and how to articulate it and how to communicate it really elegantly. But it also helps listening, because you're listening to how people are responding. And if you're selling bells and whistles and people aren't interested in the bells and whistles, it helps you remove that from your own way of presenting it. End of the day, people don't buy bells and whistles. Always remember, intimacy is a premium product. And part of what's happening when you're cold calling or you're first initiating is you're putting them on the assembly line. So if you have somebody giving you a warm lead, that's all right. That means they're in station B of the assembly line or station C. So they've already kind of progressed on it. As soon as you encounter them, they're kind of in an advanced station on that assembly line. But when you cold call, you get to put them on the assembly line yourself. And that means that you can kind of build them and nurture them from the very first moment. And that's going to have a big impact on getting referrals from them and everything else. And there hasn't been any kind of intervention from an SDR rep or whatever it is. So, you should cold call just so you can kind of get it within yourself. So I want to see networking within a client account. You got to give me more, Neil. So I'm going to scroll up, and Neil's a great guy. So what are the best ways to execute? Okay, I got that. If I'm not being helpful, hey, thank you very much for saying you're loving this. Can you sell without cold calling? We did that one. Every close is another piece of the puzzle completed. That sounds like something that's ambiguous. It doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not into those books, man. Books are bullshit. I don't know what that means. That's just reality. So I'm not the guy that's going to buy that crap, man. That doesn't mean anything. And I appreciate you being here, Dominic. Thank you so much. And it's a really cool kind of like picture you have there, but it doesn't mean anything to me, man. I'm not a bullshit guy. So let's see what this says. Oh, right. Let's see it again. Thank you. Buyers don't want to be sold. They want to buy, and they buy emotion. Buyers don't want to be sold. They want to buy. I don't know what that means either, man. This is specific, dude. This is an important part of my life. I'm not into like these little book blurbs. They don't mean anything to me. Book blurbs are bullshit. I don't care about book blurbs. I'm telling you the reality from someone who's knock on, because I'm on my wife's desk and it's like a mirror type of thing. So knock on mirror. It's I'm not going to give you the book blurbs, man. I don't know what that means. I mean, people, you're saying that buyers don't want to be sold, they want to buy. I don't know what that means, and they buy emotion because maybe they're not buying emotion, or maybe they don't have an awareness of it. The way I would say it is when they're buying something, their experience is that they're jumping out of an airplane, right? So they want to make sure that they're going to land safely. So maybe what you're saying is part of the salesperson's job is to give them the assurance that that parachute's going to open up and they're going to land safely. And that's something that you're going to be, from the very first moment you speak with that person, you're going to be building up that assurance with them, and you're going to be telling them that the parachute's going to open up for them and they're going to land safely. So Neil, again, thoughts on cold email in general and compared to cold calling? Usually they work together, right? Because it depends on who your prospect is. If your prospect, if the decision maker is way up in the company, you may not be able to reach them at your convenience via cold calling. Nancy?
Sorry, my charger.
Oh, Nancy's looking for a charger. So you may not be able to reach them by cold calling initially. And you may not be able to work your way through the secretary first. So the good thing about cold emailing is not expecting a response from them. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't, but it builds up name recognition so that you will, with a little bit of persistence and some kind of meticulous regimen, you'll be able to catch them. Guaranteed you'll be able to catch them. But now they'll have a name recognition. They'll already know your name. So they have that sense of familiarity. They've already got an intimacy with you once they've seen your name and the name of the company and a little blurb on what do you do. And they're also going to be a little bit intrigued, and they're going to want to learn a little bit more. So even though they might even sound like you're an annoyance and they might want to be respectful but get off the phone, reality is if you present it well, you'll be able to move it along from there. Selling is very personal, therefore different people sell differently. Completely true. So no worries. Thank you again so much. So selling is very personal, therefore different people sell differently. True, there are regional differences, right? Selling in the South is different than selling in New York. And I've had huge teams, and we sold all over. And I mean, really big teams, and actually for a profitable company, not for a little bullshit VC company where they can just do whatever they want because they just want to get it to an IPO. I mean, really profitable companies that are still profitable. So it's very personal. Therefore, different people sell differently. Very true. But that doesn't mean that they have permission to be scattered, right? You got to have metrics, and whatever the metrics are always going to be, even if you give them to yourself, it's always going to be the minimum metrics. Even though you don't realize it, if you're giving yourself a metric, it's always going to be almost a bare minimum, what I would think of as a bare minimum. So you've got to blow past. So yes, selling is very personal, but ultimately it needs to be a system. And if it's a system, it's no longer very personal. You can personalize it and you can add some stylistics to it, but it's always got to be an assembly line. However you get them on, however you move them through is going to have some stylistic differences, but it's an assembly line. How important is it to appear bigger than you are? I don't know what that means. I don't think there has to be any kind of deception. It really depends upon who the company is. So if you work for a big company, then you want to kind of diminish yourself a little bit because the company has already spent tens of millions of dollars, most likely, if not more, over the course of its lifespan on building up its brand, building up its awareness, building its back end, building a kind of a bureaucracy with management and kind of fail safes. So in that case, you want to diminish yourself a little bit and make sure that they know the fail-safe is the brand behind you, and that there's a manager or however it works, that there's a process that they can employ if they want to, if they're not satisfied with you. If you're selling kind of a more startup-y type of thing or your own type of product, then I wouldn't say embellish, but because you got a disadvantage that you don't have that big brand and you're not going to be able to bullshit your way into a big brand, you're going to really need to emphasize your own kind of trustworthiness and make yourself. So before you're making yourself smaller, now you've really got to make yourself bigger. And there's got to be an understanding that there's a little bit of, what do they call it? Like wasabi, that there's going to be a little bit of imperfection in the company behind you. And, but you're setting that expectation. So that doesn't mean you have to change the pricing on it or lose that discipline whatsoever. It means you always have to set the expectations in their mind. and they've got to feel like they're participating in this new endeavor of yours or in this new startup. So moving on. Until is empty one. How should a person selling change with people being viewed as virus vectors? How should in-person selling change with people being viewed as virus vectors? I'm not really sure what that means, but perhaps that means selling by video or selling, which I've always done, for years and years and years. Well, not anymore, but for a lifetime, I did a lot of selling by video as soon as the technology improved so that I could do it and the platforms were there and they on my side and on their side. So I don't think that compromises anything whatsoever. I think it kind of optimizes because you can still have that intimacy. And even that assembly line that I described with setting the expectations and asking for referrals, you're building up that intimacy. You may not be aware of it. Intimacy is not slapping them on the back and saying, let's go get a beer. That's the way to lose a sale. They're not your friend. Intimacy is that kind of trust. It's a very important thing that they're not going to get from kind of a self-service type of thing, because in their mind they're always thinking, well, I'm going to pay the minimum for this because I want to have a fail-safe that I can swap out of it, right? Because this other company, this other website has a button that I can click if this happens, and this company's button is red and yellow. No, people for the next few years at least are a premium product. So you've got to attach a premium to intimacy. So how often do you assume the sale? Always. So Flurich says, how often do you assume the sale? For example, you are eligible for product with X benefit, just sign here. I don't know what the product is, but I always assume a sale. I'm a really, really good salesperson. I take it really personally when I don't get a sale. I usually, in many ways, I would say outsell everybody. And it's not because I'm actually outselling. It's because I'm much more responsive. I'm much more honest with setting those expectations, even if the expectations are where the hiccups and where the breakage is, where the opportunity for things to break down can occur, so that they're aware of it. And if they're aware of it, we can work through it, right? So because, sometimes we have to deal in reality, and, there are opportunities for things to kind of fail along the way through paperwork, or whatever it is, or approval processes or whatever it is. So I'm always assuming the sale, but I'm assuming the sale in every single interaction that I do. I mean, not just in closing a deal, but even I'm assuming the sale when I think even when I'm today, Nancy and I, we met a little puppy. So we were petting the puppy, and, of course I put my hand up to sniff so that the dog could sniff me so I wouldn't startle him. But I've already assumed that sale, even with that, even in that brief exchange with the puppy. I know kind of the rituals, and I know why they're occurring. So I know I've got to put my hand up to his nose, and I know that he's going to sniff it. We're not too close, but then he's going to come a little bit closer to sniff it, and then he's going to let me pet him. So I've assumed the sale. If that makes sense to you, I've assumed the sale, man. Even in that exchange with the dog, I've assumed the sale. And with the owner, I've assumed the sale because I asked the owner. It's an assembly line. Everything is, man. I've asked the owner, may I pet your dog? Thank you very much. And, at the completion of that sale, so to speak, I say, thank you so much for letting me spend time with, I think we met a dog today. I forget, Bailey. We met Bailey today. It was a 9-month-old golden retriever. It was so cute. So sweet. And so Daniel Babbitt says, love that you differentiate trust and friendship. Yeah. Look, loser salespeople don't, because they think that they're going to spend time on the phone and that what they're trying to sell them is the wrong thing. And what they're expecting back from that person is the wrong thing. Trust is that this person is going to get the job done. And along the way, you can have laughs because you always want to smile and you always want to be pleasant, but that's kind of a cordialness to it. But the reality is they've got a business, they've got a job, they've got a life, and so do you. And you're trying to kind of intersect at this point as perfectly as you can. And then after that, they're going to be giving you referrals because you've set that expectation. It's not even that you're trying to achieve a friendship with them. You're trying to achieve this kind of collaboration in business. So if that makes any sense to you. So thank you very much, Tim. So good to see you here. In professional services, I use firm and separately personal brand. Am I missing any strategies? In professional services, which I've been in all my life, I use the firm and separately a personal brand. I don't know. I'd have to understand exactly what you mean. A firm and a personal brand. Tim, would you mind kind of elaborating on that? I'm really interested in what you mean by that. It's because you are out. It's because you are outselling, not outselling. Gary Faulkner says, "I think I met Gary through Jack Murphy, if I recall that correctly. He had something to do with some really cool stuff. So if that's you, if I recall, it's because you're outselling, not outselling. I don't know. I don't like those little things, man. I don't like them. I don't like the little blurbs that you read on books. Because I think I've read maybe 2 books on sales, and they all sucked. And nobody should read those books because then you're always sticking to a script. Then you're not being natural. You're not kind of trying to progress the whole thing. Your idea of progressing that sale is to get back to what the script says. You'll fail. I'm telling you, it's just a matter of time. If you stick to that book and you stick to that script, there's nothing that's good that's going to come out of it. It's kind of like in boxing and in fighting. And I'm not a fighter. I'm not a boxer. But so I've heard. It's like you take kung fu for a year, right? And then when you go out in a confrontation, and don't go out in a confrontation, but when you do, you're trying to kind of mimic in real time all those things that you did, and the person's just going to punch you in the nose, right? So it's not become such a big part of your character, of your being, of your awareness, of your body, of everything else. So they're not going to be really obedient and watch you do all these little things. They're going to punch you in the nose. So I don't know what those. I don't like books. They're stupid. They're a waste of time. Send them back. Just Fluid says, "Thanks for doing this. Yeah, I love this type of stuff." And hopefully everybody will go to the podcast I did with Jim, because I spent a lot of time discussing this. So Gary says, "That's right. Like using the big 4 exclusively." No, you're trying to abbreviate it for a Twitter thing, please. I'm really interested, Tim. Kevin, namaste, and thank you so much for participating with Nancy and Nina in that kind of investor series 7.5, which is really about the internals. Firm brand has to be strong, but each partner is different. Personal brand should be additive. Whatever that means, that sounds about right. If that means something to you, then I agree with it, because I'm sure that requires a little bit more elaboration. And the firm brand has to be strong, but each partner is different. Personal brand should be additive. I suppose you're actually talking back to Tim, so I don't know. But I'm not really a big personal brand type of person. I mean, if you're working for a big company, then they've got to be the brand. You can't have an ego about it. Actually, I'm going to turn that light down. But you can't have a big ego about it, because you're going to mistake your brand for their brand. You're going to, that's a little bit better. I look so pale, and I'm not that pale. And then when I'm not pale, I look all red, and I am kind of red. But so I would say that if you work for a big company, I'm not big into the personal brand type of thing, because the personal brand is just, this guy can get it done. And perhaps my personal brand throughout the whole thing was that I was the most forthright. I was in a way, the hardest worker, but the hardest worker will define differently. I was always responsive, immediately responsive, because I know they're calling up somebody else, usually the competition. And I know those people are lazy and they suck and they lie. So, because they're desperate, right? They just got the job a year or 2-3 years ago. They don't even know the product. You know, they're on probation at their job. They suck. So that's not me, man. So Gary says, which podcast? I did one with Jim O'Shaughnessy, which was awesome, which was just about sales. And in case you missed it, I was the first person to appear in it twice. And it was really awesome, because the first one was just about my own family office and about financial type of stuff, which was cool. But all of it happened through sales. So Jim and I discussed it, and I did another one about sales. And we just did it, and I think he just came out with it. And so I'm going to skip across. Yeah, Kevin, I see that you're replying to the professional services comment. So Kevin says, by the way, I've started trading all my teams on systems over goal. Our productivity is through the roof. Yeah. And then just make sure how you're observing the productivity. Always be worried about this, right? Always be worried about how much time they're spending on prospecting, how much time it takes them to close, and really shorten that cycle up, because this is a killer for any company. This prospecting, closing, prospecting, closing, prospecting, closing, prospecting, closing is an absolute killer. You got to smooth that as much as you can. So just turn everything into a mechanical process. And as part of their identity, you got to tell them to throw out the shit, because people, it is kind of 101, but people really do hoard crappy type of stuff because it's part of their identity that it's a deception that they got to be willing to let go of what's not a really good prospect. So Zoom versus person travel is allowing for us to cover so much ground. But in person does give you even a bigger premium, but at the same time, it can also be a waste of time. So I would definitely say, it's in later stages, and only if it's a really good client. But at the same time, I think people now have become so used to it. So there's a good part and a bad part about doing all the Zoom. And I discuss this with my wife a lot because she's fantastic at meetings. She's got her team is incredible. They're really good. And I tell her all the time, because I hear her team is great. Then I hear the people that she's interacting with from other companies or whatever it is, and there are some different situations. And I know they're not going to succeed. As soon as this economy kind of snaps back, which it will very quickly, I think, they're not going to succeed, because now the company is going to be looking to swap people. Right now, they're just trying to survive. Every company right now is not making a lot of big attrition jumps where they're firing people, but they're really not kind of rotating a lot of staff in and out. But as soon as the economy pops back up, which it will, they're going to be looking to swap people in and out, and they're going to be looking for productivity gains and for short sales cycles or whatever it is, in any capacity, whatever your role is. Thing is that a lot of people suck over Zoom and suck over these type of meetings. They're not articulate. They'll say the wrong words. They just suck. Either their visual presentation is not very good, or their voice is not right. So my voice within this is actually really good, because my voice is I've trained my voice over so long to kind of go up and down and to keep people kind of entertained and emotionally attached to what I'm saying, and also to my visuals and to my face and everything. Although I naturally have a very expressive face, I have an awareness of it, right? Which is a good thing. So a lot of people aren't going to be able to succeed because they don't have that performance in them. It doesn't have to be my performance, but they don't have the performance qualities in them to be able to succeed and to be able to build intimacy over Zoom, right? So, they don't have enough trust in their own systems that they can do that assembly line via this type of a medium, right? So this medium is obviously what's going to be enduring, but they don't have that assembly line type of thing. And when I hear them talking, they sound like a book. They sound like they've already decided what they're going to say before the other person says it. They already know what they're going to say in advance, and they're just going to get back to the script and however they can. They're really not going to be responsive. So in that environment, I'll always win, right? I may appear a little bit goofy, this or that. It's okay, because at the end of the day, I'm going to be more professional. They're going to have more trust in me. I'm going to have, even though my head's going to be shaking a little bit and doing this and that, I'm going to be so prepared for that conversation, and have set the expectations, not just for this conversation, but for the next conversation and the next conversation, that from the very first time I've ever spoken with them, I'm going to lay out all the sequence necessary for them to become a client. If it's 5 steps, 6 steps, whatever it is, and each amount of the paperwork that's going to be required. I don't have to go into precise detail about something that's 3 steps down, but they're going to know that there's something that's happening 3 steps down. So Gary Faulkner, they also suck when they're in a room with you. I don't know what that means, so I guess I missed something earlier. Shez O'Shea, nice dog. Cute dog. Personal versus corporate brand. What matters is that you deliver on high level to client. That is your brand. I suppose. I mean, it sounds good to me. Personal versus corporate brand. What matters is that you deliver on high level. Well, look, if you work, I know that I spoke with somebody from Jack Murphy's thing, and he worked for LinkedIn. Person was awesome. LinkedIn is the brand. You can't compete with a LinkedIn brand. A person should be fired for even thinking that, because they're going to get themselves into trouble. they can't compete with the LinkedIn brand. They're going to be trying to sell on personality, never try and distinguish yourself by your personality. It's the stupidest thing you can ever do. I hate people with too big personalities. It's always like they're trying to conceal something, and that's the way the prospect is going to look at it, and they're not going to be able to survive the vendor management process, because after the CEO says yes, then he hands it off to his assembly line. He hands it off to his CFO and to the controller, whoever kind of is in the org chart, and they don't care about your personality. They've got their own assembly line, and they're dicing through. So I don't know. I'm not a big personal brand type of person, and I understand that that's the way the world looks somewhat now. And so I will say there's a difference between working for another company, working for your own product. Even for your own product, a personal brand can be good. It can also be dangerous. So just be a little bit cautious. Just make sure that the personal brand can both complement your personality and be a real expression of your personality and who you are as a human being, but at the same time always conveys the professionalism and no matter what is approachable, right? You've got to be approachable. So that's a tall order for in that type of environment. So I went through a whole bunch of questions, and I don't want to keep anybody on here for longer than there's questions here. And I'm not going to answer anything that's not here. Let me see what this is. Ty the Judge says, according to Toyin.com, looking for salespeople. We are filmmakers and horrible with sales. Oh, that's your company. That's really cool. According to Toyin. Okay, so it depends on what your compensation structure is. It depends upon whether you've already articulated exactly what the product is. And you see what you're doing and there's a conversation I have to have with a few people because I haven't followed up with them. I've been a little bit busy on something else, but I told them I wasn't following up with them right now. But is remember something, when you're hiring salespeople, no matter who you are, whether you're a big company or a small company, that the only difference is that who's doing this effort that I'm going to describe, you're transferring over. You're transferring a lot of knowledge. You're transferring over a lot of processes, and you're really investing in that person or in that team. So you've really got to have the time commitment to do so. And even in advance of you hiring them, long in advance of you hiring them, you've got to take down everything that's here and transfer it. And it's a very tedious, exhausting process to do, particularly if it's a younger company, because what you're transferring over is a little bit ambiguous anyway, right? And you're hoping that the salesperson can help make it not ambiguous. That's not the right expectation. You can't ask somebody to take something and to go out and pitch it if it's not already really defined, because then you're not going to have rigid pricing or disciplined pricing, right? You're just going to say, go sell it, and the person's going to come back and say, okay, we can sell it for this. And then another thing that's going to happen is the prospect is going to wind up defining, if the salesperson doesn't know precisely what the product is and with the sales on and every single thing, if you fail to transfer any piece of information, any part of it, it means that when the salesperson is going out there, the prospect is going to be defining what the prospect is. So, the prospect is going to be defining what the product is. And then they're also going to define how much they should pay for it. So you can't, you gotta get yourself out of that box. So I would say the first thing is, have you really gone through the effort of transferring that over? And it's exhausting to do. It's a really exhausting thing to do. And I can almost assure you that whatever you've done so far isn't right yet. And one of the difficulties, again, of being a younger company, which it sounds to me like this probably is that, again, there's a little bit of ambiguity. It's kind of like, we're hiring salespeople to help us. A lot of them say, I'm hiring a salesperson to help me figure this out. But that's wrong, because that's not what a salesperson is there to do. And you're already causing kind of some friction in that setting and in that relationship. So I'm going to scroll through and see if I missed anything. And if I didn't, then we're all going to go. If I didn't miss anything, we're all going to go. So I'm just going to scroll it. Until it's empty, I still see that thing where you said, is it just me or a connection getting paused a lot? So I think I know. There was a really interesting, hold on. Here's this person so Awakening, Awake Threeming. I know nothing about sales. Are we actually selling ourselves or our products? You're selling yourself. but that doesn't mean that you're not selling a product. But as I said earlier, I'm not sure if you were here. I guess you were. You came in around 7 to 7, it looks like, or you asked that. But you're always in life, whether you're an artist, whatever you are always selling yourself to yourself and to other people. And every single social encounter you have with other people, you're selling a little bit of yourself. And now it depends upon how you define what your own identity is, because what are you selling to them if there's not a financial exchange, if there's not a transaction occurring? I gave you a description of the dog today. Wife and I were playing Scrabble, we're getting a bagel, and I wanted to pet the dog, right? I love dogs. So I'm selling a little bit of myself even to that dog, which is what I described. I, said to the owner, can I say hello to your dog? And they said yes, but they're going to be a little bit reluctant, right? Because my sneakers are torn and I just came out of the gym, and they don't know me. And so first I asked, so I'm selling myself to them. This person is non-threatening. That's me consciously selling to that person, and I'm the product here, right? And then I went down to the dog's height. I love dogs. Love animals. So I went down to the dog's height and I offered my hand. The dog came a little bit closer, sniffed my hand. I'm selling myself to the dog. Honestly, right? What else am I doing? Selling myself to the dog. And then, I petted him a little bit and then he gave me those eyes. So, we fell in love, right? That's how it happens with dogs. But I'm selling myself in that encounter. And then I continue speaking to the owner, where did they get their dog from? How did they decide on this breed? That's all part of that. I'm not trying to persuade them. But so what am I selling on them? I'm selling them on them, and I'm not a threat, that I'm a nice person, that if I see them again on the street, we'll say hello to each other, that this is a happy person. And, I think, Anthony Pompliano and I did on his podcast that he did one on mine. And he said that his identity, he wants people to think of him as a happy person. And although that's kind of a rather incomplete identity, and then I grilled him a little bit on it, it's still part of what he tries to express to other people, and including himself. And so nothing about sales, but that's not true. You do know a lot about sales. So now, are we actually selling ourselves or our products? So now, as I explained, you are selling yourself. Now, the product comes along with you, but we are always selling ourselves. So now in a business environment, are we being properly compensated for that part of us we're selling? So today, I was selling myself to the woman and to the dog, and there really wasn't any financial transaction. I just wanted to pet the dog, right? But if when there's a financial transaction, it's a little bit more of a robust back and forth, then I want to make sure I'm properly compensated, because I'm going to use all my charm, I'm going to use all my persuasion, and I'm going to use all my kind of completeness as a person and responsiveness. And I want to be properly compensated for that, because I know I'm using a lot of my discretionary effort. It's like when you go into a store and the person who, you say, where do you sell this? What aisle is this? And the person can either be gruff and unwelcoming and inhospitable, and they're like, it's not my store. I work for Dwayne Reed or whatever it is. It's their store. It's an aisle 7. And that's fine. That's who the person is. And you just walk away and, you have disinterest in the person, and they probably have a disinterest in me. But then there's also that person that is more willing to engage, even by just smiling, or even just in the way they convey aisle 6 or whatever it is, or sometimes they'll walk you over there. That's discretionary effort, right? And in a professional environment, now they've got to say to themselves, am I getting properly compensated for this discretionary effort? Because the person doesn't need to do that just to satisfy their job requirements. So even in that situation, that low margin transaction, the person is selling themselves. They want me to think of themselves as a genuinely nice person. So I'm just making sure that I've gone through everything. So hold on. I like this question. The Whipper Nation, how can selling identity be helpful for unfamiliar technical people like engineers or analysts? Because you've got to be aware of it. So the Whipper Nation, I'll repeat their question. How can a selling identity be helpful for unfamiliar technical people like engineers or analysts? Engineers or analysts are the worst salespeople there is, because they have too much pride of ownership and vanity of authorship. And they're always trying to sell something that they haven't coded in yet. Right? And that can be a real big problem. And they're trying to make something that's too big. So before they even realize that what the product really is. They're making something that's an abundance of product. And it doesn't really work for so much in the real world. And that's a big problem. I've known a lot of startups. So I say this with a lot of authority. This is always the case. So the way to compensate for that is you've got to have an awareness that this is your own type of, it's not a flaw by any means, definitely not a flaw. It's just, it is what it is, right? It's just your own personhood, right? So you just have to have an awareness of that. And in many cases, you can compensate for it by having a person with you that's a little bit more familiar with pushing you out of the way a little bit to get a deal closed, and not allowing you to overtalk something or over complexify something, and also to rightly price something, because engineers and such have a lot of difficulty pricing themselves, because it's not so easy to quantify not only what is it that they're selling, but what they'll be selling next year. So if that makes any sense to me, and if that makes any sense to you, and Wilbur, please, I'm not going to stay in here too much longer, but if you can further that a little bit, I'd be really appreciative. But please be aware of that. And the solution is not a chief revenue officer, because again, you're always having to transfer what's in your head, and what's in your head may not, particularly if you're an engineer and you're the CEO, whatever it is, or you're an analyst and you're more familiar with the back end. I think that the real value is on the front end, right? It's where you can really differentiate yourself, because there's a lot of products and there's a lot of analysts, and I've gone through a lot of them. So let me tell you that at the end of the day are all the same. You may not think that, and you may think that these little nuanced things are the difference. It's not. The person is always the difference, always. For a real high, in order to sustain a business, it has to be profitable. So you can either bring a lot of clients on and then hope that, the world changes and so you can build up some ancillary products and you can make the thing profitable. That really doesn't work that much anymore. That worked for a while because people were pilfering our clients. But they were pilfering the low yield, low margin clients that we didn't really mind losing. They weren't able to capture a lot of the high profit clients. There were new entrants, and, ask me more questions about it, because I like that type of stuff. And typically the big companies always work. So you really have to, big companies can usually win by attrition. So you really have to be careful how you present yourself. Let me make sure. Okay, here's something else you say. Can you elaborate the differences between an established selling process and the selling script? Okay, yeah, that's a really interesting question, because a selling script is kind of an adherence to something that's inorganic and unnatural. Does that make sense? So it really is a script, and in your mind, anytime you've even written out a script, you're always going to be trying to return to that script and to return to that sequence that they say this, and this is a trigger action. So if this, then that. You're always going to be trying to go back to that, and you can't. It's not natural. It's inorganic and it's inauthentic. You're not going to be listening. The benefit of cold calling is that you have to listen to be good at it. So as I was telling Jim O'Shaughnessy during his thing, I knew how much people weighed. I knew what they looked like. I could, within striking distance, kind of give you even a sense of their diet and their height and their own physical activity, because you can hear it in silence. You can hear it. You can hear their breathing. You can hear if they're breathing through their nose or their mouth, but you've got to listen to it, because it's going to sound horrible, but horrible is true. These are all things I'm going to weaponize against them in a way, right? I'm going to weaponize it. Any piece of information, I want to take that information and turn it into a value. I want to extract value from that time with them. So I want to get a sense, because I also want to tailor the way I'm talking to them, right? The only way I can do that is to listen to exactly what they're saying, exactly how they're saying it, and what they're not saying, with their breathing, with their deliberations, with their pauses. Even if they say, we're looking at a competitor we don't need, and then, we don't need this, and you can ask, okay, what competitor are you looking at? When you say you don't need it, are you currently doing this or that? And you can pursue it, but you can only pursue it not according to the script, right? You can only pursue it because you've heard what they said and you're being responsive to what they said and what they didn't say. So how can a script tell you what they didn't say? how you should respond to something they didn't say. So a selling process in itself is something much different. A selling process is however the relationship is initiated, you've got to visualize and conceptualize that it's an assembly line, right? And these are the exact sequences that have to occur with exactly the type of information, exactly the type of feedback for it to go from, this is a reverse type of thing. So this is point A, okay? And this is point Z. It's like, it's a little bit reversed here. Is what are the steps to get it from point A to point Z? They've got to be precisely articulated. It's a machine stamping, okay? So, and it's not just you stamping, they're stamping back because they've got to perform as well. They've got to give you the information. They've got to be compliant with it. If there's other departments that are involved, they've got to engage with them. They've got to be turned into your advocate. And they're not going to be turned into your advocate unless they have confidence that you're not going to embarrass them in front of their peers or in front of their spouse or whatever it is. And as part of that, that expectation within that selling process is that they're going to give you referrals because you're doing all of this. And this requires a lot of discretionary effort because that guy who's not closing the sale or that woman who's not closing the sale isn't doing any of this shit. They're lazy. They're working till 8 o'clock at night. They're telling people that they're busting their ass. They're not doing crap. They're wasting their time. They should just leave and go to a movie. So stick to the process. So hopefully that explains a little bit. And I just want to make sure if I missed anything else, because I'm ripping through these, because it's now been an hour, 1 minute, and we're going to get off the phone pretty quick. I'll get off of this pretty quick. Got to go feed my infant son before bed. Yeah, we'll listen tomorrow. Thanks, Anna. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for being here. How much, and then I'm going to just look for this, and then we're all going to get out of here. How much do you pivot, approach to buyer style, like big picture versus detailed pictures? I don't pivot that much. I make them pivot to me. I'm going to tell you the truth, Kevin. Kevin asked, how much do you pivot approach to buyer style, like big picture versus detail people? No, they're going to pivot to me. I don't care what their style is that much. I mean, I do because I want to know how to communicate to them, and I want to know how to communicate to them in a style and in an approach that they feel comfortable with, because I don't want to be confrontational to them. I don't want to be antagonistic to them. And I want to be very aware and cautious with my words to them. But I'm also bringing them to me. Do you follow me? So I'm using all that information to bring them to me, to my style. And my style is there's an assembly line and I'm putting them on it and I want them jumping on it. So that means they're going to need to conform to a little bit of mine. And, you know, I can tell you, if you've heard some of those periscopes, it may not seem it on my investor series, but I'm always bringing them over a little bit to me, right? Because people will wander in conversations, and even I will wander. But now, when we're talking about an assembly line, it's very rigid, right? And they've so if that answers your question. I'm not going to continue it too much, but Leslie says, thank you for doing this. Yeah, thank you for letting me do this. I just wanted it to be fun. Thanks, Adam. We'll check out the podcast. Let me see if I missed anything. This might be it. So let me see. The Wilbur Nation, how can a person begin building up a selling identity? It's not a selling identity. You're not getting it. It's your identity. Your identity doesn't have to be a selling identity. Your identity just has to take in who you are as a person and who you are as a professional, and then be able to communicate that unabashedly and with sincerity and with honesty. So, you know, Adam is the type of person, I want people to think of me as the type of person who can close a deal, but that's a lot more nuanced. I'm abbreviating it for you. Adam is the type of person who's reliable, who, if he says he can get this deal closed, can get the deal closed. Adam is the type of person that is not going to give us any complications on sales, that, you know, he's not going to misrepresent and cause the company any anguish or misprice something or misrepresent something. Or Adam is the type of person who's going to be very clear in his, you know, communication, whatever it is. So it's not just that I've abbreviated inside. Adam is the type of person who can sell and can do this, but really to give you the full, to transfer that identity to you means Adam is the type of person who's going to communicate honestly about it. Adam is the type of person who takes a lot of pride in a job well done. Adam's the type of person who likes people to say, Adam, you did a good job. Thank you for doing this. You know, so there's a lot of it. So it's not, I'm abbreviating it. I don't want you to abbreviate it. So I want you to look at the completeness of what that is, if that makes sense to you. And please feel free to reach out. So I'm going to go, you're always selling yourself to yourself. Wow, what an insight. I don't know. Is that, I don't know if the person's being nasty. And I don't really care. So it is, hopefully they took that and that's a genuine thing because you really are. You really are always selling yourself to yourself. Your brain is your customer, man. Your mind is your first and only customer at the end of the day. So Nick Rufa, newbie question. Adam, is pricing determined by the company or salesperson, or is it a combo? It's got to be determined by the company. It can't be that, the salesperson, if they've got some maturity in a company, can realize that there's a bandwidth that they can operate. There's a sandbox that they can operate within. But a company has to be extremely pricing disciplined and very rigid on it. And this becomes a problem in a couple of different cases. If it's a young company that thinks that the strategy is just bringing on mass and getting to size, and then they can do a sift. Once they brought on all these clients, they can do a sift for who's profitable and who's not profitable and raise the prices. That worked out somewhat frequently, or sometimes whatever the percentage was, it wasn't great in the old economy. That's not going to work out in the new economy. I can tell you right now. So is pricing determined by the company? Yeah, it's really got to be. But now the problem with that is does the salesperson really know what the product is? Or are they an advocate for the client, or are they an advocate for the company? Because you can't be both. So if they're an advocate for the company, they're trying to get maximum pricing for that product, which means that they've got to be a better salesperson. So if they're an advocate for the client, that means if they're an advocate for the company, they're trying to get the best possible and highest possible pricing. And in their mind or identity is they want to represent the company as best as possible because they love the company. They love that their check clears. If they're an advocate for the company, for the client, so now I gave you the advocate for the company that they work for. Now, if they're an advocate for the client, that means that they're negotiating against the company to get the cheapest price for the company. And they're going to make up a lot of complications that shouldn't really exist. They've got this competitor that they're considering, or because we do this and they don't need that, they don't want to pay for it. They're becoming an advocate for the client. So you've really got to consider, is that person really doing a good job? Because unless they can kind of convert that and flip the switch, it might be something that they're forever fixed on, and they might be better at working for the company, working for the client, the prospect, than working for you. So you've always got to consider that, dude. Who are they? Either they're a company advocate, the person who's paying their paycheck, or they're the prospect or client advocate. Can't be both. And they've got to. It's not fungible. They've got to decide really quickly who they work for, and a lot of time you're going to find out that they actually work for the prospect, and they're representing the client's best interest, selling to the dog. It's true. So G. Day Ritz says selling to the dog. LOL. So now I know that their spare was good. So thank you so much for saying that, because I love dogs. You just answered my question. That takes cycles, not scripted. Okay, so I think I'm done, right? I think we did. Thanks, engineer. So earlier question helped too. That's it. We're done. I did this for the fun of it, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to keep this up. So I like these things being statues made of sand. I like the impermanence of them. It's one of the reasons I really enjoy Periscope. So I hope this was a lot of fun for everybody. It was a lot of fun for me, and I got a lot off my chest too. So I kind of feel good about it. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to always reach out to me. Definitely listen to the pair podcast that I did with Jim, because I really did that for other people. Because just as I'm telling the CEO or the boss, I'm telling you people how to transfer information over to the salesperson, and the determination and the kind of the thoroughness and how exhausting it is. I really want to do that with Jim also, because I really want to transfer as much over to other people as I can in the most efficient and optimal way and friendly way of doing it. So we did it. We're all done. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I might be able to do something on our way out. Let me see if I can do this on our way out. I can. Everybody's going to listen to some music because I already had it programmed in. And into the music, which was Nina and her daughter, I'm going to say, everyone's going to hear it for a few seconds, and I'm going to say goodbye. So everybody have a wonderful day. Hopefully you can listen to this again, because I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it up. Everybody have a wonderful day. This is Nina Rao and some beautiful music. Everybody have a wonderful night. Bye-bye. Jai Guru Maharani Guru Antar
Devi Mata, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antaryami, Devi Mata, Jai Guru Maharani, Guru Antaryami, Devi